I want to thank all of the organizers of the Arizona Good Business Summit and Arizona Local First Arizona for inviting me to be here today. It's an honor to follow Donna DiFrancesco and Vincent Stanley from Patagonia, a company that has set such a powerful example of leadership by continuously re-examining and reimagining its business to lighten its load on the planet, and by being a strong advocate for public policies that cut climate pollution. You know, the timing of your summit this week could not be better. And I want to talk briefly today about why this is such an important moment in the climate fight, why business leadership is critical to meet the moment, what some of the biggest opportunities are to reduce emissions through public policy at the national level, and how all of you can help. So why now? So we are at an inflection point in addressing the climate crisis, and there's so much at stake. There's also real reason for hope, which we haven't had in a long time. For starters, we have a president and a new administration that is serious about addressing climate change. Today and tomorrow, in fact, President Biden is hosting world leaders in a global climate summit and will announce a new nationally determined contribution, or NDC, for the United States under the Paris Agreement, which is a pledge to cut our emissions in half by 2030. Now, meeting this target is critical to keep the US on a path to reach net zero emissions by 2050, which is what scientists say is needed to keep global temperature rise under 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is an ambitious target, but it is achievable if everyone, governments, businesses, citizens, gets behind it. And businesses like you have an especially important role to play. So in my work at EDF, I've seen firsthand the power of businesses to make a difference in fighting climate change. EDF has worked with companies like Walmart, McDonald's, FedEx, Tyson Foods, and many others to set and achieve ambitious climate goals and to drive change through their supply chains and across entire sectors. But the fact is, and many of these leading companies also recognize this, that while corporate actions to reduce emissions are important, we can only get the deep decarbonization that we need to meet our climate goals with public policy. And that's why I would argue that the most powerful tool companies have to fight climate change is their political influence. I'll just share one example. A week ago, over 300 businesses, large and small, signed on to a letter to President Biden urging him to set the US NDC at 50% below 2005 levels by 2030. And this letter was re-released just this morning with over 400 signatories. And some of the companies that signed on are based right here in Arizona. So a special shout out to First Solar and Simply Straws that are headquartered here. And many others have major operations in Arizona, including ABB, Amazon, Apple, Ball Corporation, General Electric, PayPal, Target, and Verizon. So there's no question that that letter paved the way for the ambitious NDC that the president announced today. So let's think about the opportunity to cut emissions through national policy. So with the new Biden-Harris administration and with this Congress, now is our chance to make a giant leap forward on climate. And the best way to do that, the two things that are at the top of EDF's list are the same things that were at the top of Vincent Stanley's list: electrify transportation and clean up our energy. So the good news that is, by pursuing these two goals, electrifying transportation and decarbonizing electricity, we can achieve multiple goals simultaneously. First, cut climate pollution significantly and put our 2030 goals in reach. Second, boost economic growth and create jobs. And third, improve equity, especially by improving public health in communities that have suffered disproportionately from environmental injustice over the decades. So to that end, President Biden has introduced the American Jobs Plan, which will be the basis for legislation moving forward in Congress in the coming weeks and months. So here are some of the elements that we expect to see in that legislation that we're especially excited about. First, on electrifying transportation, support for domestic manufacturing of EVs, batteries, and component parts. Second, incentives to make zero-emission cars and trucks more affordable. Third, grants to school districts to buy zero-emission school buses. And finally, funding for state and local EV charging infrastructure that's necessary to make the whole system work. On decarbonizing electricity, we want to see extended and expanded tax cuts for wind, solar, and energy efficiency, and new tax credits for offshore wind and energy storage. We want to see grid modernization and investments in grid scale energy storage. We want to see funding for clean energy R&D. And finally, in both of these areas, transportation and power, it is critical to ensure that the benefits flow first to those hit hardest by climate change and air pollution, and that we ensure that investments are directed to areas that are losing fossil fuel jobs and to ensure a just transition for workers. So this brings me to what you all can do. So you can start by letting your lawmakers know that addressing climate change is a priority for your business and why. So in my experience, lawmakers always want to hear from their constituents, especially businesses that employ people. And Arizona is no different. So Arizona lawmakers want to hear from Arizona businesses about the issues that matter to you and the solutions that will help. So I encourage you, I implore you, in fact, to talk to your elected officials about how climate change is impacting your business today and how, if left unaddressed, it will adversely impact your business tomorrow. How is extreme heat, for example, impacting your ability to operate in the summer or affecting your employees' safety? How are droughts and water shortages impacting your supply chain or your ability to source products? What does the future look like to your business if we don't address climate change? What are the costs of inaction? On the positive side, you can talk about the steps that you're taking to address climate change, to reduce emissions, to share your success stories, and talk more about what you could do if there were supportive policies in place, like incentives to make zero-emission vehicles more affordable or increase your access to renewable energy. So I think businesses can be especially effective in pushing back on two false narratives. Number one, that addressing climate change is somehow bad for business or the economy, or two, that climate change is a partisan issue. You wouldn't be here today if that were so. And you are uniquely well equipped to make the business case for climate action. And don't stop there. Think about how you can be an agent of change with your suppliers, with your peers, with your customers, and in your community. I love the example that Vincent shared about the cooperation between the fish company and the sustainable agriculture firm and how they work together and create this ecosystem in the community that can operate at the local scale, the national scale equally well. And finally, I just want to sum up by addressing sort of the mental model that we have to make, the shift that we have to make in how we think about climate change. We need to move from thinking about what can we do to what will it take? And it's going to take a massive transformation of our electricity and transportation and industrial systems. But the upside is that we'll have a livable planet, a thriving economy, and healthy communities for years and decades to come. So now is the time to up our game. I want to thank you for being here today and for your commitment to lead the way to a thriving and equitable low carbon future. Thank you.